It's an ambush.
Oh my God, it's an ambush!
It's an ambush!
Of course!
Good morning, everybody. Not afternoon. Good morning. Welcome to the part 2 of yesterday's ambush stream. It's Sunday. I can't remember the last time I did a Sunday stream. This isn't a Sunday stream officially. Maybe it was last week when I was testing out my new router. Anyway, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Scribelight. Ambush stream. Just to get this out of the way, because I have to say, I'm morbidly curious to know where this goes next. Yesterday's little show, I guess it was just my naivete. I started out thinking it was just going to be a general panel discussion amongst sort of, I don't know, neutral parties, or that it would be more objective in some way. No, this was a completely partisan show from the Democrats. And that is, in and of itself, interesting and also insightful. And the things that were said yesterday, some of them, as you saw, floored me just for how unveiled they were in their thinking and their attitude about how they see electoral power and their place within the current state of things. I'll get to some of that momentarily, but first, who's joining me on this Sunday ambush stream? Kiro Soldier, good morning. Unfair Ophelia, hello. Mike R, good morning. Luke Skywalker 2, that looks like a perfectly reasonable voting district. I know. Yeah, I picked the one of the most ridiculous voting districts I knew of as an example. But, yeah, my thumbnails, what can I tell you? Walter Tomaszewski, good morning. Yay, Scribe is back. My cats are celebrating. They've composed a song in the style of Beethoven. For Elise, they're quite musical. One singing with the Cat Street Boys and Pearl Jam. Yes. Thank you, Walter. Good morning to you. Hope you're well. Mike Savage, Blarg, Resolute Germ, good morning to you. You're Ridiculous Lunatic, good morning. Derek Larue, good morning, Derek. Thank you again so much, as always, for your generosity and support. Really appreciate it. Hope you're having a good morning. Hope you enjoy the show. Make sure I get the like and the little heart on that over on the YouTube side of things. Thank you. Robert Pincus, good morning. And, and just at the last second, Jill Powers, the River Daughter. Good morning to you, good morning to you. We're all in our places with bright shining faces. So yesterday we took a look at the first part of this hour and a half long broadcast that was put out on Friday from PBS. And it's I guess a yearly gathering of the Hutchins Institute or something like that. Anyway, we have 3 panelists and a moderator. The moderator is former U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder under the Obama administration. The panelists, I don't remember their names off the top of my head. I'm sure we'll get to it as well. But we have one politician, one lawyer, and another lawyer, or a legal expert, another lawyer. The guy that we're going to hear from now is the one person who has yet to speak and give his own presentation. That's Mark Elias. I guess he's a famous Democrat Party lawyer. The gist of the talk, for those of you that didn't see part 1 is linked in the description below if you're watching this in the future or would like to reference that ahead of time. It dealt with talking about how voting rights have been curtailed, according to our speakers, and how redistricting has changed and how they're coping with it and their complaints. The main complaint seemed to be that the Supreme Court, in 2 different decisions, one back in 2013 and one that went through just this past April, I believe it was, combined, make it so that it is more difficult for people to challenge changes in state revisions to voting laws. So previously, there was a number of states, primarily in the South, that because of their past with Jim Crow laws and other discriminatory laws that would curtail voting amongst minority populations. Whenever those states wanted to make a change in their voting laws, they had to first get an okay from the Department of Justice as to whether or not it was discriminatory in its intent and or effect. Well, that went by the wayside back in 2013, I guess it was, or from the 2013 case. And so now people can't, those states can pass their voting laws of their own volition without having to check first, which in my mind seems fair, because to categorize certain states as somehow second-class sovereign states compared to others when making their own rules, I mean, I can kind of understand, as I said yesterday with affirmative action, I can understand the moral argument of putting a check on bad actors. But at this stage of the game, we're now 50 plus, 60 plus years past when the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed. So, as I said yesterday, how long do you keep these states in the proverbial doghouse as compared to other states to make their own decisions? Doesn't feel quite right when you're talking about sovereign states in a federal republic. So that was one thing. The other thing was then, when states do change their voting laws, previously, in order to challenge such changes, all you had to do was show that the effect of the changes would have a negative effect on minority populations, or at least speculative. You didn't have to prove intent, only effect. So if a state decided to pass a law that affected voting rights, and you decided in some way that statistically or by a disparity or something it would negatively affect a non-white population, then it had to be considered illegal and could be nixed. Now, the onus is on the complainant to prove intent. And anybody who knows anything about how court cases go and proving intent, that's a pretty high threshold. As it should be if you're going to accuse somebody of a crime where intent is meaningful. And so they were complaining about now people have to actually have evidence that something being passed under law is meant to be overtly racist in some way. Which I admit, that's got to be a tough hill to climb. But if it is, then maybe you don't have any proof of it. Hard to say. So that was the one thing. The other thing was the redistricting. Previously, states and state legislatures could redraw districts taking into account the race of the population in order to form racial blocks of voters. And that's, as you see on the thumbnail, one of the most goofy examples of redistricting in Illinois, where they drew this sideways horseshoe district to make sure that the district that was voting all contained the right kind of people. The Supreme Court said this year, segregating your electoral process on the basis of race, it doesn't really work. So now they can't do that. And so the complaints from our speakers were, we can no longer make race a major factor in how we district things. We can no longer just argue potential effect of a law. We now actually have to show intent and offer proof of bad acts on the part of the state legislature. And also a couple other little chestnuts, like, we need to be more like the Republicans, even if it's unethical. We as Democrats don't know how to acquire or wield power, they said. And I'm like, boy, I certainly felt the absence of weight of Democratic power during the lockdown and the Biden administration. I certainly have seen the lack of Democratic power when it comes to certain major cities and or states in our country, and how they've turned to absolute wastelands because of Democratic power. But whatever. I mean, if they mean to say they don't know how to wield power effectively and productively and justly, then maybe I agree with them. But anyway, so by all means, watch the first part if you have the opportunity. A lot more clarity there on things. And Keeverdam is here. Good morning, Keeverdam. Nice to see you. Hope you're having a good day and a good weekend. Hoot Owl, hello. Miss anybody else in the meantime? A Random American. Just here to make a comment and provide engagement. Well, thank you for your engagement. I appreciate it. I'm sure the algorithm loves it too, somewhere. Anyway, so as we left off yesterday, we were getting to our third panelist, aside from the moderator, who had not yet spoken. This is Mark Elias, or Eliason, whatever his name is. I'm going to start with Eric Holder introducing him, so we're backing up just a couple of minutes for a little bit of overlap. I'm only going to go for an hour and a half in real time. It should be enough to cover the rest of this. I guess we'll find out. With that, let's proceed.
I think the Congresswoman said something that's really important, and I think it's an observation that I've made and I've said on a number of occasions. I think that, progressives and Democrats are uncomfortable with the acquisition and the use of power.
That got a belly laugh out of me yesterday. They're uncomfortable with the uncomfortable. That's the word I missed. They're uncomfortable. They're not in it for the power, guys. No. It's like, power. Oh, and having to use it. What? Oh, geez, I don't know, man. I'm kind of hesitant. Sheer hilarity.
And that's got to change.
Right. We have to become more comfortable with acquiring power. It's about power. Not about benefiting our constituents. Not about improving the lives of Americans. No, we as Democrats, we need to become more comfortable with acquiring power.
What you say is exactly right. The other side is they're okay with the notion that they're going to be, in terms of popular support, a minority party as long as they have majority power.
Yeah, I wonder why they're more popular right now than you guys are.
And we have got to use power in ways that we have not in the past.
I would love to know what he means by that.
Not in the way that they have, but
not in the way that they... Again, I wish there was some specificity here.
Good on behalf of the American people.
Do good on behalf of the American people. So everything Republicans do is bad, and everything the Democrats want to do is good.
With regard to the act, and with regard to the decision, John, Mark...
He got his name wrong. I love that. I kind of commented on yesterday. He at the beginning of this, he introduced all the panelists, and he named Mark as his personal lawyer. That's how he introduced him. And he got his name wrong.
Where do we go from here? What are the legal tactics that we can use? What's the legal response? What's the hope that we have in the courtroom?
All right, so I normally don't do hope or change. I leave that to others. But look, here is the deal. The first thing we need to do is we need to recognize where we are. And we need to not have rose-colored glasses about it. The Supreme Court is not going to uphold protections of voting rights and civil rights.
Right. The Supreme Court is not going to uphold protections of voting rights and civil rights, even though 2023, when they put down affirmative action, they were upholding the text of Title VI. And as I said yesterday, the previous speaker, the first speaker on the panel, she brought up how the challenge to redistricting, I think it was, the court asked whether or not it was in line with the 14th and 15th Amendments. And she never answered whether or not it was, just that that's what the court asked. So the court isn't here to uphold existing federal law. No. They are our enemy, the Supreme Court is.
They are going to grant relief to Republicans on spurious theories.
Yes, as we've seen, the Supreme Court has done nothing but kowtow to the Trump administration on every decision that has come across its desk.
The fact that birthright citizenship wound up essentially 5-4 on the Constitution tells you everything you need to know about where the Supreme Court is. So we need to be realistic about the court, but we all...
Wait. So every 5-4 decision in your favor, then, is dangerous as much as a 5-4 decision in the other direction? You won. You won by majority. You won by, dare I say, democratic process. Okay. Any other decisions you'd like to bring up where Trump lost? There have been a few.
Also can't be defeatist, right? Donald Trump wants you to believe that it's all rigged and there's nothing we can do. He wants you to believe that he can issue executive orders and he can take over voting, and you're powerless to do anything about it.
Yes, because Biden didn't use any executive orders. Obama didn't use any executive orders. You want to tell us about DACA?
He wants you to believe that any effort to advance black voting power in the South is doomed because Republican legislatures will block it and the courts will back them up.
Advance black... You know, I again, maybe just my naivete. Why do we constantly have to force the idea that it is a racial question on voting power? Like black people are a monolith. They're only going to vote one way, and that's it. The Democrats think they own an entire racial demographic in this country. Why not talk about the people of the state? You know, like the voting power of Alabamians writ large. If you're going to keep segregating everybody on the basis of race and assuming to know their motivations or their desires or anything, you know, you talk about being progressive. It's not really progressive. It's not really progressive thinking. I don't think so.
We cannot give them that power.
Okay, well then what do you propose be done?
We cannot buy into that cynicism. The fact is that after the Shelby County decision came down, the very first thing I did was initiate a new series of lawsuits.
You know, the first thing you could do is bring the microphone closer to your mouth, but...
And we sued Virginia, and the net result was we created a second black opportunity district.
A second black opportunity district. A racialized district. I wonder what this guy would have to say about like a white opportunity district.
We sued North Carolina, and the net effect was, as Congressman Butterfield knows, we threw out the illegal map there and created additional opportunity districts.
Opportunity districts is a new buzzword phrase I'm going to have to get used to. Not racially segregated electoral maps, but opportunity districts. Sounds a lot like, what was the word that they used, the phrase they used for a DEI? They aren't quotas, they are, aspirational goals. That's what it was, aspirational goals. Not racist quotas, aspirational goals. Not segregated voting blocks, opportunity districts.
And we did that because we grieved the loss of Section 5, but then we moved forward.
The loss of Section 5? Section 5 didn't go away. It just isn't interpreted in your favor anymore to be racist.
And we said, okay, this is a tool that Congress passed. This is a tool that should still be available to us, but it's not. And so rather than wallowing and dwelling on that, we are just going to look at the tools that we have available to us.
So you're going to find ways to do an end run around the Supreme Court? I mean, that's what I'm hearing.
And we're going to use them in every possible way we can. And I don't want to hear that I am using legal theories that Republicans use.
That's the second time in this talk that we've had somebody on the stage tell everyone not to think or refer to something a particular way. Eric Holder didn't want his name attached to the Shelby case that they kept referencing in the first part. And now this guy doesn't want anyone to accuse him of using Republican tactics. Okay. Well, now, you see, here's the thing. It's kind of like that situation where you say, come to a group of people and say, don't think about an elephant. Now that you've said it, not only am I thinking about it, I'm also wondering why you felt the need to say that in the first place.
Yes, I used legal theories that Republicans use.
Oh, okay. But, is there a but coming?
I don't want to hear that in the long run.
So just to make sure here, he's using legal theories that Republicans use, which means that they have merit. So he's granting ethical amnesty to Republican legal tactics. Right?
It's going to harm the arc of jurisprudence. John Roberts took care of the arc of jurisprudence without me doing a damn thing about it.
I think you need to calm down, man. I think you're getting a bit too emotional about this. I think that's part of the problem with you guys.
And so as I look forward to where we go from here today, we need to look at state constitutions.
Okay, what about state constitutions?
We need to think what we can do in state courts. We need to be embracing the legal theories that we may not like, but which are the law of the land.
In order to affect what? To return individual states to racially segregated, what? Just enclaves for your political advantage? I mean, don't pretend like you're doing something benevolent here. This is all to serve your political ends, not the well-being of the constituents of any particular state or the American people writ large. You guys, by your own perspective, have lost power because now you actually have to maybe work for the votes you want to get rather than relying on tricks and tips through racial segregation to get there. You want your easy mode back. Not because it's good for the country, because it's good for you. That's what I'm getting from this. And don't get me wrong, I'm not somehow, on the reverse anointing the Republicans with like harps and halos or something, but we're not talking about them right now. We're talking about these guys. These are the big wigs and the movers and shakers in the Democratic Party. Okay. I mean, it's your stage.
A group of the story about Cray that doesn't get told. Until Bert Cray, who's a white guy from Louisiana, filed a lawsuit, you go find me another case challenging congressional districts on the basis of race where the plaintiffs were not minorities. Even the Republicans had the good sense and the common decency to find a black Republican to bring their claims.
So your problem is the skin color of the plaintiff. The Republicans had the decency. So again, as we know, you can't be racist against white people. So a white person complaining about racialized voting districts is what? Less relevant or less valid? I don't know what to tell you. I hear a lot from people about racism and being racist and so on. Most of your guys' arguments thus far have been based on skin color, not on jurisprudence or fact and emotion. So, okay, tell me more about what that has to do with anything.
What the Supreme Court did in Cray was to say that when white voters have their rights at stake, then the court needs to move heaven and earth.
And it said in the decision that their concern was white voters? I mean, if there's a quote from the, decision that says that, I'd be happy to hear it.
Even though it told the black voters of Alabama, even after they won, they needed to wait 2 years to get a fair map. And so we need to look at this and, yes, like I said, recognize it's unfair. Recognize that it is not the way it should be.
Racialized voting districts is the way it should be. Okay.
And ask Congress to change the laws. But in the meantime, be willing to embrace whatever tactic is available to us.
Okay. Let me ask you something, Mr. Lawyer, because your co-panelist brought this up and never answered it. Would any change by Congress to try to restore racialized voting districts survive a challenge against the 14th and 15th Amendments? Because that's what everything hinged on in the first place with the Supreme Court. What do the 14th and 15th Amendments have to say about this? What did they have to say in the Supreme Court's decision in the first place? And would a congressional act survive that same test?
to win now. I'll let someone else worry what it all looks like in 2030.
Your only concern is winning now. You'll worry what it has to do with something in 2030. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised to be hearing this in a public forum from a public figure on this, but so you just want the instant gratification of immediate success on the basis of something the Supreme Court has ruled unconstitutional. And who cares about the long-term effects of any of it? You just want to win now. You sound like a child stamping his foot.
And 2040 and 2050 after those rounds of redistricting.
All right.
Wow, he definitely came out of his shell there.
Amen.
Yeah, testify, brother.
Mark, why don't you tell us how you really feel?
Yeah, Mark needs to take a chill pill.
What do you think the impact, Melissa, what do you think the impact is going to be on black political power?
Because again, as we know, all black people think and vote the same way. And it's all tied to melanin count.
Given the impact of that decision, and I'll ask you what you think the impact's going to be, and then maybe our other panelists, if you can give me some numbers, what do you think the impact is going to be in terms of the number of black congressmen, congresswomen who will be serving? But
No,
DEI philosophy much? It's only skin color. Okay.
Melissa, I know that you have, but can I just start by saying that the Cray decision is an existential threat to the Congressional Black Caucus.
I mean, personally, I don't think there should be racial caucuses in the first place, so good.
That we may lose not one, not two, but up to 19 seats in the Congressional Black Caucus.
I'm failing to see the downside here. How about we have seats filled with people who know what they're doing first and foremost and not their skin color? I know, it's a crazy thought.
Now, Congressional Black Caucus was founded in 1976 by, it was 12 men and 1 woman. The woman was Shirley Chisholm. And
I know the name. The history's a little fuzzy on me, but yes.
1976.
The men's names aren't worth mentioning, of course.
So we're celebrating our 50th anniversary, and we've gone from 13 to 61 members strong today.
And that's progress. Okay.
And over half are women.
And that's progress. Okay.
Over half are women.
Yeah, I heard you the first time. So race and gender. Individual stories, merits, who they are, what they think, what their policy is, yeah, whatever.
And
Ooh.
now, we in the Congressional Black Caucus represent everybody.
No. There's a word in the name of your group that tells me that is not so. There's also a through line in this panel discussion that tells me that is not so.
Represent our district irrespective of whether the voters that voted for us were black or white or...
Then why call yourselves the Black Caucus? Why focus on advancing people first and foremost on the basis of their race? Why? You can't... I'm sorry, you don't get to make that move. You don't get to make that move. If you were the Alabama caucus, great, fine. And if your membership did not have a racial test to be a member, then fine. But you're not. And you do. So if you claim that you represent all Alabamans, regardless of their race, I don't believe you. And you don't want me to believe you.
Independent, Republican, Democrat, we do our job.
I don't believe you.
But the fact of the matter is, in the Deep South, racial polarization in voting is alive.
And who is perpetuating it? By constantly advancing the idea of racialized voting blocks, who is perpetuating the polarization of racial division in the South? What? I know it's a crazy idea. What if Dr. Doom became Sorcerer Supreme? But that one aside, what if you didn't have voting blocks sketched out on the basis of skin color in the South in the first place? Crazy idea, I know. You guys want racial polarization. You need racial polarization. You can't complain about it existing. Come on.
And so when the Supreme Court says you can have a legitimate partisan reason, they're basically saying you can use race. I mean, you call it party, but in Alabama, it's race.
Okay, admittedly, I'm not an Alabamian. I've never lived in Alabama. If you're black, are you automatically a Democrat? And if you're white, are you automatically a Republican? Okay, so party and race are conjoined in Alabama. Maybe that's so. I don't know. That sounds awfully scary.
And so it is really difficult. And what's happened is we've seen time the Cray decision came out. And I have to say that as a member who has been a good member
I'll just have to take your word for it.
Of the Alabama delegation, who has saw herself to be an ambassador for all that is good about my home state.
You know, in her first speech and now in this, she takes a lot of time out to both name drop, brag, and self-aggrandize.
I have never, those who've gone to college with me and law school with me will tell you I proudly say I'm from Selma, Alabama.
Is that some kind of badge of honor or something? Are there people that say are ashamed to be from Selma? I mean, I assume there probably are. Going over the chat real quick, just because I missed a couple. Twisted Skipster. Good morning. Also, not laws too. So let me get this straight. The Republicans are disenfranchising voters and arbitrarily gerrymandering districts en masse, but you are focused on the Democratic redistricting, even though those are voted on via plebiscite. Okay. When you say you are focused on the Democratic redistrict, are you talking about me or are you talking about the speakers? Because my focus on Democratic redistricting was kind of happenstance. Before I found this talk, I didn't know anything other than it was going to be talking about voting and redistricting. I didn't know it was going to be partisan in the speakers or the population on the stage. So, unlike the Republicans' platform, we support all PDF-rich freaks regardless of color. The sad thing about Asmongold is that he really empowered low IQ, low EQ sociopaths to have a voice. I watch Asmongold. Yeah, you're right. I take all my marching orders from Asmongold. I'm listening to these Democrats talk. I didn't know that they were all Democrats before I started this. And if you watch the first part or have listened to me anytime in the last 10 years or so, you'll know I'm not exactly a partisan cheerleader for the Republicans or the Democrats. So, but welcome to the show. Whatever.
But I want you to know that state, if the Cray decision came out on a Wednesday, on a Friday, our governor called a special session. On a Monday, they met, that special state session of the legislature met. On Wednesday, they voted to change the map back to a map that the Supreme Court itself said it was intentional discrimination.
Okay.
And on Friday, they voted for that map and they adjourned. I don't think I was prepared, Eric. I mean, I think all of us were bracing ourselves for a negative decision.
Because you're outright defying what had just been said you couldn't do?
But I know I was not prepared with the swiftness by which southern states literally just obliterated decades of hard work to try to overcome these images of our state. In every economic development effort, I've been at the table. And in every economic development effort trying to recruit industries to Alabama, they say, oh, I don't know, this race thing. And
yeah, what about the race thing? Okay. Nobody on the panel has yet actually answered the question. Did the previous policy and process violate the 14th and 15th Amendment? That's what the Supreme Court brought up. Did it? Or didn't it? Even the legal expert lady never said the Supreme Court got it wrong in asking whether or not this districting policy on race was a violation of the 14th and 15th Amendment. She just said that that was their question. So all of your work, all of your effort to make sure that this process stayed in place, if it was all built on a misunderstanding or, let's say, a non-enforcement of existing federal law for a long period of time, it doesn't make it suddenly legitimate after the fact. It's the same with DEI policy. If the EEOC simply does not enforce Title VII for 10 years, and things are allowed to run rampant, that doesn't suddenly make everything that's going on legal. It just makes it not punished. And then, of course, when punishment finally comes around, or people finally start reminding themselves, oh, wait, there's a law that says you can't do that, all the people that have been operating under a misapprehension of non-enforcement for so long suddenly think they're being victimized in some way. I'm not hearing them say that what they're doing is actually constitutional. But they want to keep trying to subvert what has been decided by the Supreme Court to try to return back to the status quo. So.
And I have to tell you, in 10 days, we go back and harkens us back to the days of George Wallace standing in the schoolhouse door saying segregation today, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever.
You're the guys that want electoral segregation. You're talking about racially determined voting blocks. You don't want the races to mix electorally, because that'll dilute the outcomes that you want in your elections. Okay.
And so I said to the business community at a recent event that I was not going to go, but felt like I had a platform too good not to use.
Uh-huh.
I said, this is not about black voters in Alabama, white voters in Alabama.
You just told us it was about race and party being co-entwined. This is all about, everything you guys have been talking about is about race. What do you mean it's not about race?
This is a business issue.
It's a business issue?
For every one of you, if you think that you can expand your business, grow your business, recruit new industry, get new clients, this is a business issue.
So we're not talking about people having the ability to vote freely and not have their votes manipulated by racial supremacists. It's about a profit motive. Okay.
As well. And the deafening silence, Eric, of the business community while this happened is
something you should think about, because obviously the business community, I guess, are all what? Not the kind of racist you need them to be?
What has been, for me, I mean, It's hard not to take it personal.
You know, I believe that you have a hard time not taking anything personally, the way you've been speaking.
It's really hard not to take it personal. And in fact, it is personal, which is why I think it's so important that you know, even though the one seat, we now have 2 seats in Alabama because of the Milligan
You're going to have
case.
1 seat.
I,
You're going to have 1 seat.
I don't know about that, Melissa. Listen, I
Okay. They can't even agree. All right.
want you to know that Shamari Figures has that extra seat from the Milligan case. And yes, the new map takes him from 48% African American to 37% African American in Alabama. But the fact of the matter is that Sanford Bishop wins traditionally in Georgia, Columbus, Georgia, if I'm not mistaken, with
Okay, I'll admit I don't have a handle on Georgia or Alabama politics to know who she's talking about. I'll just take her word for it.
34% black vote. It's not impossible. Is it a steep climb? Hell yeah. And is it a climb that we're going to concede? Hell no.
Again, just the assumption that because a population is X percentage of this racial demographic, therefore we know how they're all going to vote. It doesn't matter what racial demographic you're talking about. The arrogance of that to me is just insane. But I guess she knows better than I do.
We're not going to concede that. We're going to work because he showed himself to be a good legislator who's done amazing work in the 2 years that he's been in Congress.
Okay.
So, this is not a slight on Shamari Figures, who has done amazing work, but the fact of the matter is every VRA-created opportunity district is in jeopardy. They will be challenged, and
Opportunity district.
they will be wiped off the map because the court has said they were created with racial considerations in mind.
And they were.
They were.
Okay, well, I mean, I appreciate the honesty.
They were made to create opportunities for black voters.
Uh-huh.
That use of race, the court says, violates the Constitution.
Right. They said it violates the Constitution. Okay, you're the legal expert on the panel. Is there any basis on which that opinion rests? I mean, you haven't even weighed in as whether or not the court had a point, or how you would counter the court's decision to make it right after the fact. Like, what? I guess what I'd want to know is, if the court says this policy violates the 14th and 15th Amendments, and you say it's something that should exist, how do you square the circle with the existing amendments? How would you craft a piece of legislation to go through the Congress? How would you counter the court's concerns? Because I don't know how they do that. And I'm not hearing anything from her that says she knows how they do that.
And the Voting Rights Act. It's racial discrimination to think of race in a remedial fashion.
It's racial discrimination to think of race in a remedial fashion. Try that again.
They will be wiped off the map because the court has said they were created with racial considerations in mind. They were. They were made to create opportunities for black voters. That use of race, the court says, violates the Constitution and the Voting Rights Act.
Right.
It's racial discrimination to think of race in a remedial fashion.
Okay, that's the court's opinion.
Right? So that's important to understand. The decision, I think, actually has legs that may go beyond even hobbling those VRA-created opportunity districts. There are some opportunity districts that were not created as a result of the VRA. They just exist.
Well, are they based around race?
But the fact that they are there, they are held by African Americans or
Yeah, you guys are complaining before about how it used to be you could argue the effect of something showed racial discrimination, and that was enough to have it knocked down. But now it's a matter of having to prove intent when it comes to legislation. But in this case, it's like, oh, well, I mean, these opportunity districts just happen to end up being racially centralized, even if it wasn't intended. But that's okay. That makes them innocent. I wish you guys would make up your mind on what is right and ethical and not.
For other minorities has already created questions. There have already been some challenges raised in state legislatures about those opportunity districts.
Opportunity districts. Not racial blocks, mind you, opportunity districts.
I think those are going to be called into question.
Good. Why shouldn't they be?
There are likely to be questions about even districts where Democrats win. On the view, again, because race and partisan affiliation are so inextricably intertwined.
Race and party affiliation are so inextricably intertwined. Right, we know how people are going to vote because of their race. All white people vote Republican, I guess. Hello, California.
In the South, that if Democrats are
in the South, right, okay.
winning, it must be because there's some kind of race thing going on.
Well, we're about to find out whether or not that's true, right? Because, I mean, if you're specialized, racialized voting blocks, that's a toy you don't get to play with anymore, then I guess what happens in southern states for the Democrats will have to depend on the popular vote of Democratic candidates. What are you afraid of? If you have the better ideas, if you've got the better message, then you'll win. Right? I mean, this takes some... The map can't be rigged in favor of race anymore. Don't you want that? To make sure the Republicans can't do it to you? If you think that race and party are so inextricably tied together? Maybe I just have some rose-colored glasses on this or something. I don't know.
And if you marry what is happening in the voting rights context with what this administration and this court is doing in other places, like education and
give me an example.
Employment. If you think about the Students for Fair Admissions decision, that narrow decision that eviscerated the use of race in college admissions.
Yes. Yes. And what was the Supreme Court's logic on that? Yeah, it violated the 6th Amendment and the 14th Amendment. And what does the 6th Amendment say? It says that if you're an institution accepting federal financial assistance, you are disallowed from promoting any programs or activities that discriminate on the basis of race. Colleges and universities, writ large, are the recipients of federal financial assistance. Affirmative action uses race to discriminate. It is a program and/or an activity. It's always been a violation of Title VI. As I said yesterday, I could understand the moral argument for it in the fallout of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to those who had suffered under racist laws for generations prior, but it outlasted its usefulness, and it became the status quo. And finally, it's no longer there. I really have to wonder if our speaker has an appreciation for what the Constitution actually says in plain language when she's complaining about the end of affirmative action and the court's rationale behind ending it.
It has now been marshaled to dismantle DEI in private institutions, in workplaces that are not governed by federal law in a thick way.
Why is that? Okay, yes. Businesses that accept federal contracts fall under the restrictions of Title VI. If they have a DEI program that elevates or denigrates their workforce on the basis of race or their hiring practices, they're violating Title VI, and they could have all of that federal money terminated. And I say could, because so far we haven't really seen an example of it happening, but the risk is there. But here's the other thing. Title VI and Title VII are kissing cousins. If the Supreme Court says that race cannot be used to discriminate in Title VI cases like affirmative action allowed, and affirmative action is shot down, where does race sit amongst all the other elements that you can't discriminate on in Title VII on equal footing. Okay, so if the court says that having a program in your organization that discriminates on the basis of race, I know, crazy enough, violates Title VI, affirmative action goes out the window. There's not that sort of weird, nebulous moral umbrella against challenges to affirmative action-like programs in private organizations, then Title VII becomes a real problem for DEI companies. And then with the Ames case, leveling out the bar of what you have to prove in a discrimination case from one demographic to the other, that makes it even more of a risk. And it should have the entire time. So I'm mightily curious to know if our expert here is willing to admit the problems with these programs and these movements up against existing federal law.
And the point of all of this is that if you are in one of these situations where Black people, minorities are present, it raises the vision that something impermissible is going on. I mean, it is genuinely race ipsa loquitur.
The Supreme Court upheld the Civil Rights Act of 1964 in the affirmative action decision. DEI programs, writ large, violate or certainly step on the line of violating Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The Civil Rights Act of 1964, which I'm pretty sure everybody in that room would say is an important piece of legislation and probably held sacred. And you keep arguing against it.
The fact that Black people are somewhere, the fact that Latinos are somewhere, raises the possibility that impermissible racial considerations are afoot. And if you think about what they are doing with that.
If you have racialized quotas in your hiring practices, that is illegal. It doesn't matter what race you're talking about. You can't seem to separate this. Institutionalized racism, even if it is beneficial to the races you personally prefer, is illegal.
In the education and employment space, it's not a far leap to think that they are going to do that in the context of voting as well when it comes to districts that are held by Democrats.
And when you say Democrats, you mean Black people, because as we've been told, race and party are inextricably tied.
Yeah, I think that is the point that all of you need to take away. Okay, when Citizens United came down in January of 2020.
Citizens United is something I think is ridiculous, but I mean, I get it. You know, you vote with your wallet, using your money as a form of speech and so on, but I'm no fan of gigantic amounts of money being dumped into political contests. I don't have an answer for it, but I certainly don't like it.
I'm sorry, 2010. By the way, that was the last case that the Supreme Court decided it wanted to turn into a different case. Right? Citizens United went to the Supreme Court on the question of whether pay-per-view movies needed disclaimers. And the Supreme Court said, we don't really want to know that. We want to know if corporations can spend unlimited money, and ordered the parties to argue it. But when this court ruled in Citizens United, I was asked by a bunch of media outlets, like, what does this mean? And I said, well, there's what you're going to hear from the lawyers. All this means is that corporations can make independent expenditures on the same basis as individuals. But let me just tell you, this case is going to mean something bigger in the culture. What it's going to mean is that there's now a permission structure to spend unlimited money in elections.
Yeah, which I never thought was a good idea. I'm not sure how you turn back the clock on that one, or what a more fair assessment would be. But
the thing I worry about Cray is what the professor just said, and I apologize. They live in first names. I live in AG, Congresswoman Professor. But the point she makes is the thing that everyone needs to take away. What was the first thing? The very first thing that Republicans in Congress said after Cray?
I don't know. What did they say?
It was Senator Schmidt, who is a former attorney general of Missouri. This is a lawyer. He knows better.
I don't automatically assume that someone who is an attorney or a lawyer knows better about anything. I've heard some pretty dumb attorneys before, but go on.
He said we need to investigate California. California?
Why not? Is California exempt from examination?
I'm sorry, what? California, the place where there was just a ballot initiative to partisan gerrymander?
Well, you guys have just told us that race and party are intertwined, so am I missing something?
Where the governor said we are going to partisan gerrymander? Where millions and tens of millions are spent to partisan gerrymander? I'm sorry, Congress, Senator, oh yeah, California.
Yeah, it's because... Okay. In the first part, our legal expert off to the side of this guy here told us that when state legislatures make decisions regarding voting districts, even if what they're saying and what they're writing doesn't say anything about race, you have to look at the effect. That was their complaint, is that you could no longer use an estimation of effect as an argument to cancel out or defeat changes in voting laws state to state. You now had to prove intent. So someone says, hey, why don't we hold California to the same standard? Well, no, look, it's all about partisan. There's nothing about race. Again, California's immune from trust but verify. It's amazing just how, rules for thee but not for me all the time on this. Why is California exempt from examination on their intentions versus what they say they're doing? The jerk. So Dems don't gerrymander? Well, no, they gerrymander, but they gerrymander the right way. It's partisan. It's not racial. Even though they just got through telling us that race and party are entwined. Amsis. Hello there, Mr. Cribble. All is fine. Thank you so much. Amsis. Are you a snake? Ems. Matt T. Hello, everyone. Describe. You were right calling me Matty a little while ago. Okay. Matt T. Good. Let me make sure I got that right. Sometimes. I mean, maybe you're like like there's Mr. T. Maybe I should call you Mr. T. Are you? But Matt T. Anybody else while we're here? Lucifer Sapphire. Why are you shocked that non-whites are repelled by the Republican Party when they see white supremacists marching for Trump and flying a literal Nazi flag? Why am I shocked that non-whites are repelled by Republican? I'm not shocked by anybody being repelled by the Republican Party, regardless of their race. If you don't agree with the Republican Party, I'm not surprised. There are a lot of reasons not to be. I don't align myself with any party. Because I have different opinions on different things. Do you see why so many people are repelled by the Democratic Party? When you've got a bunch of Looney Tunes and child gender benders and rioters and Antifa on their side? Both parties have their extremities that make them very unattractive to people if they think that represents the entirety of the party. I can't blame anybody for their opinion on it. I don't know why you're thinking I'm shocked by such things, but whatever. But here's the thing. If you think that all Republicans are represented by their extremists, then you're no different than somebody that says that all Democrats are gender-banning Looney Tunes. I don't think they all are. But, there's much of a problem on that side as, say, the worst parts of the Republican Party or the right wing. So this is why I like moderate, level-headed people to be operating on things and not people who are yelling and screaming and also saying two different things at the same time, that they're completely innocent of anything that could be considered wrongdoing or unethical, and only the other side does the bad thing. If you're not going to be honest about your own party's failings and foibles, then it's difficult to take you seriously. Just as if Republicans were up here saying that Democrats do everything bad and Republicans do nothing wrong, I wouldn't believe them either. Kenny Wall, gerrymandering historically Republican born. Okay. And the Democrats have happily employed it as well. So, something originated with one side. That means that it's bad totally? And the Democrats don't? I don't know.
The reason why Eric Schmidt started with California is because his view, and it's what you just said, is that if there is a black member of Congress, there must have been impermissible use of race.
If there's a black member of Congress, there must have been an impermissible use of race. Again, you guys were talking about looking at effects rather than intention. If you had suspicions of an outcome in a southern state that you didn't like the look of, that sounds like what you were arguing you still wanted to be able to do. So it's okay to be racist on your side, but somebody else that questions the outcome on the basis of race is doing it wrong. Gosh, if only we could get past this whole race thing to begin with.
That's why California, right? California's got a bunch of Latino members of Congress, Democrats, a bunch of black members of Congress, and in their view, if that's the case, there must be something untoward. And in fact, there was a lawsuit brought against California saying this was racial gerrymandering.
And how did that lawsuit go? I mean, again, did they have to prove intent? Did they have to prove effect? You guys wanted the effect standard. It got changed over to the intent standard. I'm guessing it probably failed because trying to prove intent like that is really difficult. You better have some good proof. And I think that's fair.
And literally, you're did I miss the whole Texas thing, California thing? This was the most partisan thing ever. And so I worry that in the weeks and years to come.
What happened with that case? People bring lawsuits against states and other organizations all the time that either have merit or they don't. Is that case ongoing? Just someone bringing up a case is not evidence of everything falling apart. Okay.
What you just said is going to be the cultural moment. It is going to be, as you say, res ipsa loquitur, that if there is a black member of Congress, there must have been some impermissible use of race.
And anybody that wants to put up the money to file a lawsuit can do so. Just like you guys brought up, you just talked about bringing up 6 or 7 different lawsuits on different states after the Supreme Court made their decision to try to turn back the clock on their decision. Okay.
So to be really clear, I don't want to be right about this, but I really fear that this is not like a fight with my husband. I do not take any pleasure in being right about that.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been there. Yeah.
Eric doesn't know where to go with that.
Yeah.
But I genuinely think this is where we are going. I mean, we are already seeing this in employment and education. If you have black doctors or black medical students at Yale, it must be because Yale is using impermissible affirmative action.
Okay. Now, I am decidedly a little biased here, but when I've spent the last 10 years watching educational institutions and corporations say in no uncertain terms that their goals involve increasing the percentage of their workforce purely on the basis of race, I hate to tell you this, guys, this is the bed you made. And admittedly, this is the bed that was allowed to be made because the EEOC and the Department of Justice did practically nothing for the last 10 or 15 years when it came to DEI policies and race and gender-based quotas in businesses and institutions. Unfortunately, the bad acts and publicly declared acts of multiple educational institutions and private and public companies have required suspicion to exist. That's the fault of your success. I don't know what to tell you. I wouldn't blame somebody who, after a decade or more of DEI programs looks at a company that said, our goal is to have 50% women in the leadership teams by 2025, and then see a whole bunch of women being promoted to positions of authority and not wonder, did they get there because they earned the job, or did they get there because of their gender? And if they got there because of their gender, there's this whole Title VII thing that comes into play. I don't know what to tell you. This is the result of your own movement to balance race and gender against merit. You know, it's the same questions that haunted affirmative action for all of its existence. If only we hadn't had any process by which someone's race or gender was given weight over what they could do in the first place, we wouldn't be here.
Right? If there are black students at Harvard, it must be because Harvard is doing something that they're not supposed to be doing. Like,
if you've listened to the administrators at these schools, there's no reason to trust that they're not still being racist. I don't know. Listen to what they say themselves.
it could just be that they're good.
It could. And this is the problem. This is the problem with affirmative action programs the entire time. And even Clarence Thomas has talked about this. The suspicion, the very existence of a program that says your race matters first before your scholarship or your merit will always put a question mark over the head of anybody who falls within the preferred demographic. Did you actually get here because you earned it? Or did someone in some administrative office somewhere take pity on you because of what you are? This is why these programs shouldn't exist in the first place. There shouldn't be any doubt that someone got somewhere in life or in a position based on anything other than their ability. I would hope. And yet you are pining for the programs that introduce doubt. I wish you would make up your mind.
Better than good.
Better than good? More human than human? Can Rob Zombie be far away? Or Tyrell Corporation?
All right, we've talked a lot about the Voting Rights Act. We've talked about Section 2, Section 5, preclearance, Calais, the Shelby County case. We've got a little thing coming up called the midterms, 2026.
Oh boy, let's get into the meat of it. I'll take a moment here over in the chat. Ames. You just have to look at the example here in the UK with the Professor Jason Arday that got caught cheating and how the left claimed it was racist, witch hunt that resulted in his death. Yeah, I've covered it out on the channel here. Yeah, you don't want to get called out for elevating someone to a position of authority on the absence of merit. And just on a story. His entire career is based on people hand-waving a massive series of lies he told and propping him up as some kind of hero. And then, lo and behold, when somebody finally asks a couple of simple questions about how does one run 600 miles in 6 days? What marathons of the 30 in 35 days did you win? What were their names? From where did you raise this 5 million pounds in charity money? Was there actually a pig's head left in front of your house that you reported to the police? How are you on a documentary series 20 years after it began? Etc., etc., etc. It's embarrassing. And you know, I honestly believe that the only reason that guy is dead now is because he was elevated to such a perch that there was only one direction to go once his lies were made plain. Lies that were easily proven by anybody in the decision-making process that elevated him to that position in the first place, but they looked the other way. So, let's see. No, gerrymandering. Again, as far as I understand it, the guy's name was pronounced Gary, so it should be gerrymandering. But anyway, gerrymandering was stated under the party that grew into the Democratic Party. Okay, again, I do not claim to be a historian. The jerk. Lefties don't mind flying the hammer and sickle, and right-wingers kick out folks flying Nazi flags. I have seen that to be so, but, yeah. Resolute Germ. How else do you expect the Democrats to make money if they can't grift off race? Yeah, you have to make the business case. A lot of this sounds a lot like the arguments in favor of DEI. It's like, let's look past the moral necessity of this. If you have to sort of hold your nose and go along with it, just think of the profit motive. Just think about the money that can be made, business owners. That was always interesting. But anyway, all right. So, yes, let's talk about the midterms. Where are we at on time here? Okay, got about 20 minutes left. I don't know if I'll finish this one off, but here we go.
Midterms. Congressman Sewell, what concerns do you have about how these elections are going to be conducted? Any worries about we might not get a result that's consistent with the desires of the American people?
The desires of the American people. Oh, that's your concern? I'm most curious about the midterms because this will be the first election without. Actually, well, I don't know if I don't know what the situation is state to state. It might be the next presidential election really takes effect. But if all the states have had to, or most of the states have had to redraw their districts not to take into account race, this will be the first time that several states will have to run an election without racialized voting districts. And I guess we'll see how that hashes out for the various states. Are we going to see some swing states go Republican that were once Democrat, or Democrat that were once Republican? Wouldn't that be goofy?
Well, I think that this president is sowing the seed of the upcoming election somehow being unfair, that votes are going to not be counted, and he has done that from the platform of the Oval Office.
Uh-huh. This is not news, so the best thing to do would be sure that all the elections are sound and secure.
That 60-minute speech that he gave did not reveal anything that we hadn't already heard about elections.
Right. He's been saying this kind of stuff for years. And?
But what he was doing was putting the doubt that somehow if Democrats win, they had to have stolen the election.
Yes, I understand that. We went through that all across before and after the 2020 election. And Biden still became president, such as he was, and then Trump won the next election. So, proof would be necessary for me to be that scared about it, but okay.
I mean, really, that's really what he wants. And giving a reason for him to nationalize or federalize law enforcement to intimidate voters.
Okay, if this was the first time, let's say that this was the first time Trump was running or something in this upcoming election for president, then take me back to 2015 when I was told about, oh yeah, there's going to be deportation squads running through the streets just picking people up on the basis of their race and throwing them into cars and jetting them off to this, that, or the other. Oh, Donald Trump's going to do this, that, or... It was all this fear-mongering about everything that Donald Trump was going to do, and none of it happened. So now that Donald Trump is already in office, he can't run again, he's going to federalize the police. Yeah, and you know that police departments and states around the country are just going to snap to with any decision or any declaration by Donald Trump. Because as we know, simple ICE activity in various states have just been welcomed with open arms because Donald Trump said so.
And so I really think that the real concern here is that he is setting the stage for a takeover of our federal elections.
I was told not that long ago that being a conspiracy theorist was an unforgivable sin. Okay, so he's going to take over the elections because the Supreme Court said you guys can't be racist in your districting anymore. Okay.
That's really scary.
It is scary. Do you have any evidence of this?
And so, hell yeah, we should all be concerned about it. Really.
Okay, well, if you really think that that's happening, if you really think that the President of the United States is going to take over the elections and force an outcome against the will of the American people, that is uprising level territory right there. If you honestly believe that is going to happen, that would be the utter and absolute destruction of the United States. So if you truly believe that is going to happen, what recommendations do you have for the American people?
I think that, and then people look and they want to say, oh, but it's going to be okay, right? And the fact of the matter is, it may not be okay.
It may not be okay. Okay, the executive branch takes control of U.S. elections and it may not be okay. No, that would simply be, and putting it mildly, not okay.
And if we sit back and do nothing, if we don't organize and mobilize
to do what?
according to the state laws that are in place today, so for Alabama, that means I'm telling my constituents they have to have a piece of a photo ID. There's only 7 that they'll accept. You have to have one of those 7.
Well, I was under the impression that certain people in this country didn't know how to have a photo ID, and that's why photo ID is bad. So you're requiring people to have a photo ID. So you're in favor of voter ID just to make sure that everybody's vote is counted and counted correctly? Okay.
You got to know that your polling station is still your polling station.
Sure.
And you need to be there between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. because we don't have early voting in Alabama.
Well, why doesn't the Black Caucus make that happen? Why don't you pass a law or something, if that's what you want? Okay, so yes, the electorate need to be informed about the election process. I agree. And they need to have photo ID when they get their ballot. I agree.
So if things go awry,
Okay, what do you mean by awry? Do you mean awry like there's evidence of vote tampering, or awry like you don't get the result you want? Because if you think things go awry when you don't get the result you want, then you're in no better a position than Donald Trump.
for whatever reason, the polling stations go down for a couple of hours, we don't get extra time. So that's what's really frightening about all of this.
So you think the polling stations are going to be sabotaged by the Republicans? Okay, well, I mean, increase security at the polling stations, I guess. If you really think that's going to happen, and I'm not being sarcastic, if she honestly believes this, I mean, like I say, I wouldn't put anything past either party to try to disrupt the voting process at this stage of the game. Underhanded tactics are things that are hard to be proved after the fact. So if you really think that's going to happen, well, what steps do you recommend be taken to prevent that?
And the fact of the matter is that we're not fighting in Alabama for equal representation.
You're not?
Alabama is, the African American vote is 30%, 28% of Alabama.
Okay.
Voting population, 28 to 29%.
It seems to be the only population you really care about, which is kind of odd given that you said earlier that you worked for all Alabamians, but okay.
We have 7 seats, 7 congressional House seats.
When you say we, do you mean Alabama, the state, or do you mean black people?
And one is 14% representation. So for my 7, for the times that I was reelected, I was the only one until this past year.
The only one, what? Okay.
And what we're asking for is not some representation. Go back to just me being the only person there.
Then what are you asking for, and how do you aim to achieve it?
It's fair representation.
What do you mean by fair?
Because it's fair. fair when you're almost 30% of the population and there's 7 seats that you get 2.
Okay, but who... Hold on. So, you're talking about racial representation. Is that it? I assume that's it, because that's what this has all been about. So, it doesn't matter about representing your constituents as an Alabamian. It means representing your constituents as a black Alabamian. Right?
So there's no daylight between Shamari and I.
Oh, okay.
We are a package deal.
Not if the voters don't say so.
In the state of Alabama.
All right.
Well, your colleague on the panel seemed to disagree with you a few minutes ago with her outlook, but okay.
It's an interesting thing, too, that the Supreme Court used Section 2 to create the very seat that Shamari Figures actually holds at this point.
Okay, and is that guaranteed or locked in stone that it's got to be held by someone on the basis of their race?
It's the same court that then, a couple of years later, looks at the same Section 2 and raises the concerns that...
Yeah, I know. Things change over time.
So that was in Allen versus Milligan, which
Right.
was decided in 2023. 2023 was 10 years after Shelby County. It was also 1 year after the court overruled Roe versus Wade in Dobbs, and I think they did not want the public knowing that they were eviscerating voting rights in Section 2, because they also knew that the Louisiana case was going to come down the pipe too.
They didn't want the public to, like, the Supreme Court held all of this in secret? Okay.
Yeah. All right, Mark, now briefly, as we're kind of running out of time, get as specific as you can with regard to the concerns you have about the 26 midterms. What are the kinds of tactics you think you're going to have to confront as a leading election lawyer?
Yeah.
Okay, well, before we get to him real quick, just want to go back to the chat real quick. Matty, be hypothetically ready to get hypothetically prepared for something to go wrong. Well, like I say, if someone has a genuine concern that something untoward is going to happen, then by all means have whatever safety guards you need in place to try to prevent or mitigate that. You know, we have seen individual people try to do some pretty underhanded things when it comes to voting before. And to say that it's not coordinated in some way, shape, or form, I think would be, pretty naive. But I want our elections to be secure. I want our elections to be participated in by legitimate voters and not people standing in or non-citizens or anything else. So, hey, regardless of the general timbre of the state in question, whether it's Republican or Democrat or whatever else, if you think that there's some danger of some sabotage taking place or whatever else, then have all the observers you can get in there from both parties to watch everything, watch every step. Security guards, cameras in appropriate places, whatever. Go ahead. I would rather elections be some of the most secure things that we have going on in this country because we are America. And I don't want to feel like or suspect that our elections come anywhere near some of the, nonsense that we see in other countries at times. So, hey, if you're a Democrat and you think Republicans are going to do something goofy to your elections in your state, okay, well then figure out a partisan method by which everybody gets some eyeballs on the process. By all means. So now her, trying to doomsay everything and fearmonger, I'm not a big fan of. But if she's got a problem, work it out. She's the person in charge. Ken Paxton threw out 1.5 million votes in Texas. He wouldn't be president if he didn't do that. Ken Paxton isn't president. And on what basis were the 1.5 million votes thrown out? Were they illegitimate or dead people? I mean, he just willy-nilly threw out 10 million, 1.5 million Texans just became disenfranchised overnight. 60% of Texans vote Democrat, and because of Texas's gerrymandering, they hold very few districts. Well, then they should be challenged if there's something untoward taking place. I mean, and this is the problem that they put the threshold on, is that if now you have to prove intent, that there's some racial question, and that the only legitimate way to gerrymander, I'm going to keep saying it, is on a partisan basis, well then, I guess the next question is, how do you create districts that don't take into account partisan leanings? The next question is, and I honestly don't know why it's okay to district on the basis of partisanship or historical partisanship in the first place. Like I say, I do not claim to be an electoral expert, but if it's wrong to assume the outcomes of voters on the basis of race and district that way, why is it okay to assume the outcomes of voting by residents on the basis of assumed party affiliation? Because if you make a district on the basis of, well, this district is going to be Democratic, and 20% are conservative and 60% are Democrat or progressive or whatever, and then the rest are somewhere in between, well, you're effectively disenfranchising that 30% who don't want to go along with the party they've been, grouped into. So while I definitely disagree with districting on the basis of race, I don't get the logic behind, well, then it's okay to do it on a partisan basis. So, it's not okay unless it's through a plebiscite, which the Democrat states did and was still reversed by the court. Well, if it was reversed by the court, then maybe it wasn't okay in the first place. I don't know what you're talking about. And that's just me expressing my ignorance, not saying that you're wrong, but okay. 60% if Texans don't vote Democrat, it's closer to 42. Okay. Got competing percentages going on here. Those Texans live in the major cities, which are always blue. Yeah, urban centers generally, as I understand it, generally lean more towards liberal thinking. Fair, she means equity, or fudging the vote numbers to get the results that she wants. That's it too. We want fair representation. Fair representation just on the basis of race. She wasn't talking about representation of the constituents. She's talking about a racial test. There's 28% black people in the state. We should have 2 seats. We, the collective, based on race, not just Alabamians. Because as we know, skin color determines ways of thinking and your opinion on things.
So, look, I have a lot of experience with Donald Trump. I was Hillary Clinton's general counsel. I represented President Biden and the Democrats in beating Donald Trump and his allies.
So you're definitely not unbiased in this, okay?
60 times after the 2020 election.
Yeah, keep bragging. Do you have an answer to his question?
And here's what I've learned about it.
Okay.
His plan is to make it harder for you to vote and easier for him to cheat.
Harder for you to vote and easier for him to cheat. Okay, how?
And he's going to do that through a couple of things. The first is he's going to assert he has powers he does not have.
He's going to assert he has powers he does not have. Okay. Well, let's not pretend that every president, as far as I've been alive for, has done that exact same thing, regardless of party. But okay, specifically, what powers do you think he's going to assert that he does not have?
He does this in all areas, but he does this particularly in voting. Last August, a year ago, he said that the states were his agents for the counting and tabulating of ballots. That's not true.
Okay, and I know this is hair splitting a little bit, but not too much. One thing that I've had to learn about Donald Trump in particular, if not politicians writ large, and is definitely underlined more under Trump than I think previous presidents, is you have to show me the difference Or I should say, you have to show me the connection between something Donald Trump says and something that actually happens. Because Donald Trump, like Elon Musk, makes a lot of promises about things, makes a lot of declarations about what the future will hold and what will happen and what he will do, and that oftentimes doesn't actually come to pass. Or it's an empty promise, or it's an unfulfilled, slightly modified outcome. So, Donald Trump saying something is one thing. Now, I don't know what he's going to say next, but the next thing he has to follow this up with is evidence of action, not just his rhetoric. Because rhetoric, unless you've got something else, that's all it is. This is why it's so difficult to take Donald Trump seriously most of the time with anything he says, up until the point he actually does something, because I don't know if it's just hot air. I figure most of the time it is, until something actually happens. And by then, it's kind of too late to say anything. And I suppose that's his genius. If you say enough things that sound ridiculous often enough, and then nothing happens, then you can never really be sure when he's actually going to act on his declarations. That may be his sort of chaotic advantage against his opponents, is that you always have to be on your toes because anything he says could be the truth and not just hot air.
The Constitution gives states the ability to set the time, place, and manner of elections. Congress can pass laws to override that.
But you guys were really, really big fans of having the Department of Justice check on states' abilities to run their elections. Now you're all for states having independent ability to run their elections? Okay.
The president has no power.
Well, he has no political mechanism power. I mean, he's got influence, sure. But okay, if he's going to try to manifest powers he does not possess, specifically, what do you fear is going to happen? Aside from rhetoric.
No power in the conduct of federal elections.
Yes.
That's not me saying that. That's me quoting a federal judge in Washington, D.C. saying.
Okay, I'd prefer you saying you're quoting the Constitution, because federal judges tend to shift as the political winds blow themselves. But okay, I believe you. So what do you think Donald Trump is going to do specifically? Not say, but do, to create powers he otherwise should not or would not possess.
There is no power for the president in this role. But he's going to assert that he has those powers.
Okay, assertion is not possession. Again, simply asserting something does not make it so. So if Donald Trump says X, and he can do this, can he? Will anybody follow him if he says so in any way that can't be immediately called out and stopped? And especially with the rampant opposition to anything Donald Trump happens to say from federal judges and district judges, etc., I would be surprised that anything he asserts outside of black letter law is not going to be immediately challenged if it happens in the next 3 or 4 months leading up to the election.
He is right now asserting the power to have the Postal Service decide, or have him decide the Postal Service can't even deliver you a mail-in ballot unless you're on an approved list.
Well, I mean, I thought the approved list was you're a registered voter. What do you, okay, is there something else? What's an approved list? And if he doesn't have that power, is the Postal Service just going to comply? I don't know the answer to this.
He lost that case.
What the? Then why do you complain? Okay, wait. Like I said just a minute ago, simply asserting that you have the power to do something does not make it so. So he lost that case, so he's not allowed to do it, right?
We're waiting on the Supreme Court to see what they do there.
Okay, so it's still possible, though probably not likely, that the Supreme Court is going to hand over electoral powers to the executive. Okay.
So what do I worry about? Number one,
apparently everything, but go ahead, that seems to be your job.
I worry about these voter suppression tactics. Like, it's easy to jump to the post-election and certification, but Don't ignore the fact that making it harder for people to vote matters.
Okay. Maybe I missed it from the first part or something. You guys have lost the ability to district on the basis of race. The onus for challenging election laws now falls on the plaintiff to provide evidence of intent. These are the two major things that I've taken out of this discussion so far, the biggest changes. All right. So, how does this suppress votes as opposed to possibly changing your desired outcome? This is the sort of disconnect I've had, the conflation that I see throughout this conversation. There's a difference between the suppression of votes and you guys not getting the outcome you want. You're going to have to convince me on the actual suppression of votes part.
It matters. You know, I was telling some folks yesterday, I sued Georgia in 2020 because if you were in the 6 metro counties of Atlanta and you were in a precinct that was 90% or more registered black voters, you waited in line to vote an average of 51 minutes.
Okay.
If you were in the same 6 counties, same budgets, same government, same everything, right? Same 6 counties, but you were in a precinct that was 90% or more white, you waited in line 6 minutes.
Okay, and okay. What was the cause of that? And here's the thing, and I know, oh, well, you're just being, no. A disparity does not inherently indicate an inequity. Okay, maybe there was. Why was that? Why was the wait time longer? Just saying that there was a longer wait time. Why was there? You must have the answer to that. Why? And if it is something that is effectively preventing people from voting efficiently, and you're talking about this is since 2020, so it's been 6 years. So you must have identified the reason and have taken action to redress it. Yes?
So the reason why Georgia then passed a ban after we won that lawsuit.
What lawsuit?
The reason why Georgia then passed a ban on providing food and water to people waiting in line.
So the voting was taking longer because people weren't being provided food and water while waiting in line?
It was because the only people waiting in line to vote were black.
Why were they waiting in line longer? Specifically. You must know the differential. What was the difference between the white majority districts and the black majority districts that had an inefficiency? And if it was an intentional inefficiency, if it was sabotage, what was it? How do you fix it? What Can you tell us what the problem was? It must be a measurable difference. And I'm not talking about outcome, I'm talking about mechanism. What was preventing voting to be quicker in those districts versus the other districts?
Right, it was a way to tax and discourage black Atlantans and Georgians from turning out.
But that is a... Why did it take longer? What was causing there to be a longer delay? Was it structural? Was it policy, procedure? What?
And so the first thing I worry about is just plain old-fashioned voter suppression before you get real fancy about it.
This is what is so frustrating. It's like listening to a TEDx talk. They bring up something very specific as a problem or as an undesirable outcome. And there's been plenty of time and ability to figure out what the source of it is, and yet for some reason won't say what the source is. You must know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know why that is. Why was it a longer wait to vote in black districts versus white districts? Why? It must be an observable fact, right? The difference between the number of polling places or some kind of process or procedure and why? Why was it quicker, one to the other? Why aren't you telling us?
We have seen a rollback of voting rights in the states.
What specifically?
Particularly states run by Republicans.
Such as, I mean, and if you're talking about voter ID, I'm sorry, that just doesn't wash with me as a suppression tactic.
The second thing I worry about is that when that isn't enough, he escalates from claiming powers he doesn't have,
which can be immediately challenged and shot down because he doesn't have them,
and encouraging and lying about things.
Encouraging and lying about things? Have you existed amongst politicians for any period of time?
To trying to subvert the outcome. You know.
Do not pretend that your side of the argument has any harps or halos available on that score. Come on, guy.
One of the first things he did after the 2020 election was to try to get local county election boards not to certify Joe Biden the winner.
And yet they did. I don't applaud his efforts on trying to subvert procedure, but it had no effect.
This is not January 6th. I'm talking about like November 10th.
Yeah. And how did that go for him?
Right? He tried to get the local boards of elections to say, don't sign the paperwork to send it up.
The operative word there being tried, because he had no power to stop them. And he didn't.
In 2022, I had to sue Cochise County, Arizona. I had to sue Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, because they were copycatting what Donald Trump had urged in 2020.
Okay, so they were doing something illegal? And you sued them for it? Okay. And how did that go?
I worry a lot about election deniers in local election offices.
You mean like Hillary Clinton after the 2016 election?
Being pressured by Republicans, the Republican Party, by the White House, by others to try to prevent certification of elections.
I worry about that too. I'm glad we have laws in place that do a good job of preventing that for the most part, and people on the lookout for such pressure like you to do that. Because I don't trust the Democrats, I don't trust the Republicans when it comes to these things. So good. For as many pitfalls as there are with our default two-party system, at least in some instances, one keeping a check on the other is actually beneficial. So good. I don't want our elections to be falsified or thought to be fake or rigged or anything else. I can't help, and I don't necessarily blame people for having suspicions because of rhetoric, like the stuff that Donald Trump puts out there, but also because of the rhetoric that you guys put out there in this very talk. You're complaining about the elections no longer being rigged in your favor on assumption of racial thinking. If the Democrats have the better ideas, then they'll win, right? If you guys can district on the basis of partisanship, then you'll still win because you'll have the better case to make to the public, right? Okay.
And then obviously, the final lesson we learned from Donald Trump is that when all else fails, he'll escalate to violence.
When all else fails, he'll escalate to violence? Okay, this is going to be a pure January 6th thing, right?
What January 6th was...
Yeah. Okay. And, yeah. Okay.
Just the escalation to violence. What we saw in Minneapolis was just the escalation to violence, right?
What you saw in Minneapolis? Yeah, tell me about those states that worked with ICE to achieve the goals they were going after. Oh yeah, but we didn't hear about those states. Because then ICE wasn't having to fight against the grain to get the job done and being opposed by local authorities and politicians and protesters that were encouraged by the local governments to resist federal officers. Who was promoting violence in Minneapolis?
I mean, the first place he sent ICE and his immigration enforcement regime wasn't Minneapolis, it was LA.
I wonder why that was. And who was violent in LA?
And he tried the military, and the military was too disciplined, so he got rid of that, and then he tried it, then he went to Chicago.
You mean the Immigrations and Customs Enforcement Agency, that is a federal agency, went to various cities within the Federal Republic where immigration... I don't know if you know about the problems in Chicago regarding illegal immigrants and the influx therein, or New York. Remember when Eric Adams over in New York said that the immigration problem in that city was going to destroy New York? Yeah, I know. A Democratic mayor saying that. Okay.
And then he went to Minneapolis, and then you saw U.S. citizens being killed in the streets of Minneapolis.
You saw a lady who tried to run over a police officer with her car get shot. And you saw, from all that I know, a complete Rube Goldberg set of tragic circumstances that led up to that second guy getting shot. He brought a gun to a protest and everything else happened, and it was all confusion and nonsense, and that guy ended up getting killed. Probably because of... I still can't tell. Watching the... I've seen the footage several times now, and it's difficult for me to tell whether it was a tragic, honest mistake or a reflexive, incompetent act. Because I've seen several theories, but I'm assuming that's still in investigation or something.
So it's like, I'm not here to tell you what that violence will look like, whether it will be the people he pardoned and an outside militia, or whether it'll be state, it'll be, federal agents or...
Whoa. Okay. The fear-mongering. You don't know what that an outside militia? Okay, if we want to talk about the people that he's pardoned recently, we can go on for that. All of the fraudsters and the crypto schemers and everything that he just let off the hook. Oh yeah, not a fan. For as many people that were convicted of fraud, like, oh God, what's his name? Trevor Milton from the Nikola company with his fake 18-wheeler trucks or whatever, electric trucks that he falsified. And got convicted of fraud, and then he got completely let go. Was it the Binance guy, CZ or whatever? Yeah, he got let off. There was a couple of like reality TV stars that got convicted of fraud that he let off. Donald Trump really likes letting convicted or just about convicted fraudsters off the hook, especially if they donate to his causes. It's not a pay-for-play situation at all. No.
Or what it will be. But there is nothing that Donald Trump won't do.
Okay. You said that you okay, and I can hold Donald Trump to account for a lot of things. Do you think Donald Trump is going to employ an outside militia to commit acts of violence if the midterms don't go his way?
Nothing he won't do to stay in power.
There's nothing he won't do to stay in power. Well, he fell out of power, and he can't run again after this. So, I really wonder, what are these guys going to do once Donald Trump is no longer a factor on the political stage? Except as, I don't know, an influencer, effectively. What are they going to do then? When you can't just send every complaint up to Orange Man Bad?
And he is worried that if there is a Democratic control of the House, that if she has a gavel and he has a gavel, that his political power disappears.
Every president fears that if there's an imbalance in the branches. That is not unique to Donald Trump. The party in power wants to stay in power. It doesn't matter if it's the Republicans or the Democrats or what time period we're talking about. Why do we have elections if not the parties trying to gain control in some way, shape, or form of the various branches of government? And
so that is what I'm worried about.
You're worried about the party in power trying to maintain power. Well, I'll tell you what, Republicans, when Obama was in office, the Republicans were worried about the party in power attempting to maintain power. That's why they ran candidates against the Democrats. Yeah, you're worried about not getting the power that you want. That's the constant back and forth, isn't it? But if Donald Trump doesn't get his way in the midterms, then armed militias are going to descend upon the various states on his behalf to overthrow state government and turn the elections back? I mean, if you say so.
Melissa, one of the things that we've talked about is the problematic Supreme Court that we now have with that conservative
The problematic Supreme Court, the Supreme Court that doesn't make decisions you agree with some of the time. But then other times it decides against Donald Trump, but we're not going to mention those for some reason.
For a majority. Are we stuck with them for a generation? I mean, are we? What?
Short of ill health or something else happening. Yeah, you were the Attorney General of the United States. Why are you asking that question?
Is it, in terms of reforms, what kinds of things do you think we ought to be considering? And if there is trifecta control, as Congresswoman Sewell talked about in 2029, how do we use that power with regard to the Supreme Court?
How do we alter the Supreme Court to ensure we get the results we want going forward? You know, if there was if this panel was made up of Republicans saying the exact same thing, it would sound just as insidious.
So the Supreme Court's a real problem.
Yeah, when you don't get your way, it's a real problem. Oh boy, I've gone way over time. Okay, I'm only going to go another 8 minutes, top of the hour, guys. I can't do this forever. And this has got another 30 minutes on it.
You know, I know that there are very, very progressive candidates around the country winning, talking about things like Medicaid for all. They are talking about Medicaid for all.
Who's going to pay for Medicaid for all?
But not talking about the prospect of Supreme Court reform. And
well, it's going to be an uphill battle. I don't know where it is written as to the population of the Supreme Court, but I'm assuming it's going to require major heavy lifting on the part of the Congress, House and Senate, to make that happen. So what's the likelihood that you're going to get enough votes and be able to resist a filibuster wherever to make that happen?
that is a fundamental mistake, because even if you are successful in passing something as monumental as Medicaid for all, Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh and Sam Alito will punt Medicaid for all into the sun. And
well, I'd be curious to know what their legal argument would be on that. But if there is a legal argument to be had against it, what would you say to that?
we will never see it again.
Okay, well, you're the legal expert here. What would be their argument against Medicare for all? What part of the Constitution do you think they would cite in opposition to that? And do you have an answer or a workaround to it? I mean, I don't know. I assume you must have been thinking about these things.
So you cannot talk about achieving progressive policy gains and be inattentive to this court.
Well, I suppose you couldn't do that with any court, but All right, so what is your proposed solution to get around the justices of the Supreme Court on this?
And how unbalanced it is in terms of its composition. We should not forget that.
How would you propose to balance the composition?
At least one of the seats on this court is a stolen seat.
A stolen seat?
No, two.
Two stolen seats.
Two.
I'm trying to be fair.
Which one? Which one are you picking?
I was thinking of Neil Gorsuch's seat, which was impermissibly held over for Donald Trump's election.
Okay.
We have to be serious about court reform, and I am an institutionalist at heart. I even at Berkeley, I wore a blazer to class. I am not a radical.
You're not a radical. Okay. But you still didn't answer the question as to whether or not the racial gerrymandering was a violation of the 14th and 15th Amendments. Okay.
I am not a radical, but this term of the Supreme Court truly radicalized me. I used to talk about court reform.
Maybe then you're not in the right mindset to be doing what you're doing. Think about what she just said. She's been radicalized. So you don't possess any objectivity?
Reform is like, okay, that's the third rail. It cannot be the third rail anymore for any of us. I mean, if you are truly an institutionalist, you have to think about how the court as an institution is off the rails.
Okay, well, since you've already told us in no uncertain terms that you don't have any objectivity left, and you say the court is off the rails, my first question is your definition of off the rails, I didn't get the result I want? Because if that's the only thing that equates to off the rails, then I don't know what to tell you. Not getting your way all the time. Okay.
Okay, well, we've talked about court reform. In your minds, Congresswoman Mark, what does court reform mean?
Okay, you know what, guys? I'm going to stop that there because we're moving on to a completely different topic, and I've gone far over time than I thought I would. Rather than an hour and a half, I'm getting into 2 hours. So, shall I do a part 3? And we can hopefully finish it up? Because this is very interesting to me. This is very interesting to me to hear the the insiders talk about their outlooks, their plans, their beliefs, and so on this stuff. So I'd be curious to go about it. But ultimately, if you guys don't care, I can't say I'm beholden to you. But if nobody's really interested, I can watch it on my own. So anyway, let me know in the comments and in the chat, just for reference. But also, if you'd like to join the Discord server, let me put a link to the Discord server here. 1 second. This link is only good for 1 day. So I'll put in the chat here. If you'd like to join the Discord server, yes, that's right. Okay, if you'd like to join the Discord server, click on that link and find yourself on the landing channel called Say Hello. And in addition to saying hello, you just have to say the secret word. The secret word tells me that you're not a bot. Actually watch the stream and have thus earned the right, the privilege, the entitlement to join the Discord server. And today's secret word comes to us from Cyberpunk 2020, the classic role-playing game of the dark future. And today's secret word is complex. Yes, just say hello, complex, and I'll know that you watched the show. Outside of that, I may once again have to move DEI Death Watch to Tuesday because tomorrow's got some work stuff that'll probably interfere. But I'll let you know. As far as a third part of this, it'll either be at a weird time tomorrow or Tuesday, depending on what happens with work stuff. I'll figure it out one way or the other. I'll let you guys know in the Discord and on the Twitters. Elsewise, you can also find me here Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for the next episode of TED Excellence, where I'll take a look at another off-brand TED Talk for education and enlightenment. Anyway, what's this? There's so much chat in the chat. I love it. Anyway, everybody, thank you so much for joining me. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things, even though everyone here is so well behaved. You have very, very little to do. Everybody who donated, either to myself or guys in the chat, the link to Blood Cancer United. Thank you guys so much for your generosity and your consideration. And I just realized I forgot to put up the banner and the chat box throughout the entire stream. This is what I get for doing an ambush stream on a Sunday, which I'm not used to. I apologize. I should have had the chat up the whole time. That's my bad. I'll remember next time. It'll never happen again. Anyway, everybody, hope you have a good rest of your Sunday and weekend. Hope you have a good week ahead of you. I hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon, and I will see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.